welcome back. And we hope that our introduction isn't too redundant, but we're going to tell our story again. And we're also very excited to have our live audience in addition now. So we have people from Australia, the UK, Massachusetts, California, lots of people. So thank you everybody for coming in the Zoom. And again, welcome to the SLOP Film Festival. My name is Sophie, and this is my co-founder, Leona, and we're the SLOP team. So SLOP stands for Student-Led Online Programming, and we are a video collective on Haverford's campus that connects students to collaborate and support each other on video production projects. From journalistic endeavors to software workshops, SLOP has no genres and aims to increase accessibility to filmmaking for any curious student with a passion for storytelling. Can you tell her to? We are a network, a production studio, and a platform. And we couldn't be here today without our experiences these past couple months. This past summer, Leona and I, with the help of Hilda Delgado, participated in the Haverford Incubator program, where we were given resources, tools, and funding to carry out our SLOP vision. It was an incredibly empowering experience to receive feedback and guidance from some incredible professionals. We spoke to Sang Cho, the co-founder of Kai Media, a digital entertainment company facilitating K-pop fandom around the world. He ended up being our summer mentor. We spoke to Rothe-Kushel, a filmmaker converting school buses into filmmaking studios for kids in Detroit, and we hope to have him on a future panel. And we met with Chip Duffy, a creative director at Cartoon Network, and learned about programming and marketing in the television animation world. But what we really took away from all these meetings was that there's power in bringing people together to absorb fresh stories, unique perspectives, and interdisciplinary ideas. So we crafted the SLOP Film Festival. Since mid-July, we have been working nonstop across oceans and Zoom calls to prepare what we have for you this weekend. Today, we are very excited to present a panel and two Q&A sessions. And we have a tight schedule to stick to, so we ask that you save your questions for the Q&As and ask them promptly. So now I will launch into our introductions for the panel. We have an incredible group of individuals here, and we are sure that you will have many questions. And so again, we're going to start with the moderated portion, and at 2 p.m. we'll open it up to audience questions in the chat. You'll also be able to unmute, but we'll go through that process later. So now we'll introduce, and we do have an update. Unfortunately, Walter Rubin has come down with a sickness. He's not COVID, but yeah, he will not be able to attend today. So, but otherwise, to begin, some stories lead to tragedy while others lead to transformation. Jethro spent 20 years studying what stories make the greatest impact in transforming human lives. After graduating from Poly and Dartmouth, he started his career studying stories of people experiencing homelessness in Los Angeles. A series of documentaries he produced led him to work with a local leader who, with the help of voters, raised $3 billion to fight homelessness in Los Angeles and provide permanent homes for 23,000 Angelenos. That's an underestimation. Jethro has produced 24 movies and television series, the Oscars, and was elected as the youngest vice president and national board member of the Producers Guild of America, where he has represented 8,700 top producers of film, television, and digital content. His work also helped convince Star Wars creator George Lucas to invest $1 billion in bringing the first museum of narrative art to Los Angeles in 2022. He is the founding president of Dartmouth Alumni and Entertainment Association, Ivy Entertainment, and Entertainment Research Institute, and serves as the director of communications for consumer and business affairs in LA County. And then switching over, we have Mr. Mark Hudis. Mark is a TV writer and producer. He is 5'5", an Aquarius, and thinks astrology is total BS. In addition to that, after attending Haverford College, he began his career as a magazine writer, working for Mad, GQ, and Playboy. When he transitioned to TV, his first job was a writer on the American sitcom Sybil. With a realized passion for television comedy, he stayed on writing for the screen. After Sybil, he was invited to work on a new small show called That 70s Show. He stayed on for all 8 seasons, taking on other roles over time, and wrote a total of 22 episodes. Mark is known for his work on Nurse Jackie, True Blood, and Elementary. In 2010, he received both a Writers Guild of America and an Emmy nomination for his work on Nurse Jackie. So we're going to just start with our first question. These are very general questions that we hope you can take wherever you see fit. But our first one is, what are some of the inspirations and influences for your specific kind of storytelling? And we have obviously Jethro, you're a representative of film, and Mark as TV. Now, not of the whole industry, because we understand that's quite large, but if there is something that this speaks to, yes.
Who would you like to go first?
Mark, go ahead.
Okay, I'll be brief.
Okay.
It's super easy. I just always wanted to write comedy. I always wanted to write something that was funny. I started reading Woody Allen books and watching his movies when I was younger, which I know is a touchy subject now because of his past, but his work, I think, is still amazingly funny. Like Sophie had said, I started writing for Mad Magazine, and Dave Barry, a Haverford alum, was one of my heroes. And so I've always wanted to write comedy, and that was something I focused on, and it's led me to where I am today.
Yeah, that's a good answer. On my side, I think that diverse storytelling is sorely needed, especially right now. So, just thinking of the present moment in which we find ourselves, there are people literally suffering around the world due to the pandemic, the health and economic conditions that go along with it. And so I think that people are hungry, or at least I'm hungry, and like-minded people are hungry for new examples of, essentially how to live their lives and confront the challenges that they face on a daily basis. And so, to my mind, that's what stories well told provide. They provide a roadmap for how to successfully deal with challenges. A reflection of people's challenges, to know that they are not alone. And cinematic storytelling, is arguably the most powerful art form available today for storytelling. And so, that's why I think that the work you all are doing here today is so valuable. And so just want to say thank you, Sophie, Liana, and the entire leadership team, the filmmakers, and to each one of you that's here today for taking the time to create this forum at such a significant and impactful time.
That's a much better answer.
I thought yours was much better, but that's just me. Oh, bye, sweetheart. This is my daughter right here. She's gone. There she is.
Hey.
This is Layla. Bye, sweetheart.
Okay.
Thank you so much.
So the next question is, when you receive or find a new project, what is your approach to crafting the story?
And that's quite general again. So maybe there's like a technical aspect and more of like a emotional aspect as well. And Jethro.
All right. So I was lucky enough to start my career in college as an unpaid intern and production assistant. And so once I graduated, before I knew it, I was hiring the cast and the crew and creating the budgets and the schedules. And midway through that career path, I realized that I had become what's called a line producer, where you're making the budgets and the schedules. But really in that career, you have limited involvement in story. And, realize that, why was I doing this whole thing? It was all about the story. So I transitioned to working as an exec, specifically with emerging writers and directors and creative producers, to help set up and sell projects to studios and networks. And we got, some traction, Fox and CBS, and started to see, what would work in the room as far as selling a project, and arguably even more importantly, 1,000-to-1 ratio, what didn't work in the room, right? what would tank as far as, and so around that time, I also had joined the Producers Guild and, started a mentoring process with another member of the Producers Guild. And he was the one who shared with me that from his perspective, money follows talent and talent follows material. And so it was just a sort of a reinforcement that if I could get back to the material, which is essentially the story, then that's essentially what would get the ball rolling. And so I spent the next decade of my life, dedicated driving towards what makes the difference in stories that make a meaningful impact. And I had a whole bunch of mentors that I didn't come up with these things on my own, but some of the things that we determined was determining a North Star in a story. So what is that guiding light from which the entire story comes into vision? What is the central conflict of the story? What's that? They say that conflict, that drama is essentially conflict, right? You have no conflict. Someone's happy, their life is good in Act 1. They're happy, their life is good in Act 2. They're happy, their life is good in Act 3. That's no conflict. That's not a story. So conflict creates drama or creates story. And so, what is that central conflict? And typically, that's not just within the movie, but scene to scene, it's consistently playing around that central conflict. And then, finding out what is the kind of story that wants to be told, and what is the genre, or what are the motifs of that particular story, and then making sure that you're staying true to those motifs. That's to say that, sometimes things can feel trite, right? But sometimes when there's a fulfillment on the promise of the premise, that there are certain things in certain genres that need to be there, and you expect them to be there, and when they're there, they pay off in a big way. So all of that's a roundabout way of sharing, some of the story tools, but we have a bunch of them that we've developed, and I'll dive more into that later. In the meantime, I'll turn it to Mark for a better answer.
I have an answer from comedy. Jethro is clearly a bit more socially conscious in his writing than I am. When we write, and I'm so impressed with his answers and what he's trying to do. It's amazing with this kind of storytelling. What we do is, it's more of a product. We are trying to sell an entertaining product to consumers. And when I started, I was a newbie. I was 29, which is old in this business to start. But I learned a lot on my first job in Sybil. What I learned is that there is no room for delay in television. And in movies, you have a little bit more latitude and leeway to tell your story. People will give you more time. Like in a novel, people will give you a little bit of time to get the story rolling. You have more time to sit with a character. In television, especially in comedies, you have zero time. Everything must drive toward your story points. As Jethro said, you have a central conflict, you know what the conflict is, and you drive toward that immediately. When I read specs from prospective writers, one of the biggest mistakes I see consistently is that they take too long to tell their stories and they meander. The story just moves from point A sort of all the way to point Z over here, then it comes back to B. There's no time for that. On screen, William Goldman once gave a great example. He gave an example of a classroom scene where somebody's asking a question and the professor answers the question, and then he looks at a girl in the front row, or a woman in the front row in this case, because it's college, and she looks at him, and the students all start writing their notebooks, and the bell rings, and they all leave, and the woman walks up to the professor and says, "I'm pregnant." So the point of the scene is that the woman tells the professor she's pregnant. In his original version, the scene goes on for 2 pages. In the proper version, the bell rings, the woman walks up to the professor and says, "I'm pregnant." The whole scene takes 8 seconds. That's how TV works. TV is fast and furious. There's no fat. You start fast, you end fast. And the other thing that Jethro mentioned that I'm going to drill down on, Robert McKee, who's a great storyteller, talks about pluses and minuses. You can think what you want about Robert McKee. He's a little nuts, and he has a great book called Story, which I recommend. But he talks about pluses and minuses, which is exactly what Jethro is saying. If somebody has an opinion at the beginning of the scene or the beginning of the script, that opinion must change by the end of the scene or the end of the script. So you're going from one point to another point. You're moving, and the character is taking an emotional journey. And that's very, very important. Otherwise, you have no story.
No, thank you for these robust answers. I'm sorry, we were just trying to fix the sound, but we'll do that at break. So yes, going into our next question, and this will mean different things, I think, for both of you, because again, Jethro, I think you're very involved in political activism, local in LA, and also at a greater scale, because I mean, LA is sort of an example city for the rest of the country. I'm not biased, being from LA, and then Mark, you're talking about how you are kind of crafting this product, and comedy is like for entertainment and capturing an audience. And so again, this will mean different things, but I'm curious as how you both sort of define the impact of storytelling and why you really do it. And maybe impact isn't your driving motivator, but if you could talk about those either or together or symbiotically, that would be interesting. And
sure, I'll jump in quickly, because I think Jethro will have a more comprehensive answer. I mean, the impact we look for is entertainment and laughs. I started out doing sitcom. The feedback, or stand-up, I'm sorry, the feedback is immediate. If you tell a joke and it's funny, you know immediately, and if it's not, you know immediately. In sitcoms, you have that immediate feedback as well, because you have a studio audience. In drama, you don't have the luxury, but you can sometimes tell from the crew, you know that the crew is enjoying it or laughing. So the impact that we're hoping to have is pure entertainment, which is maybe not a noble goal, but in some ways I think it is. I think in some ways people really enjoy sitting on their couch with their families, watching something that's entertaining, and that's what we try and do and strive to do every day when we go to work. Make something surprising, entertaining, and potentially uplifting, depending on what show I'm working on at the time. But certainly entertaining, certainly surprising, and certainly either scary or funny. We want to elicit emotion. That's what every story wants to do, is elicit some sort of emotion. If you're doing that, you're doing your job.
That's a great answer. To my mind, you know, it's all about defining what that outcome is, right? So for Mark, it's making someone laugh, making someone cry. So once there's clarity on what the story outcome is, then you can drive towards that outcome, and that really depends on what the format is that you're going for. For instance, here's sort of a roundabout answer, right? So when I was in college, I got a grant to do a documentary about homelessness in downtown Los Angeles, right? And that opened my eyes to not only what people were experiencing. You know, it was the kind of thing I'd grown up and always seen people that were struggling, that were pushing shopping carts, sleeping under a bridge, but didn't really have an excuse to ask them, hey, what was your life before you got here? How did this happen? You know, what are the current challenges you're facing? What are you looking to do long term? Like, where are you going from here? That kind of thing. And so I used that project as an excuse to essentially ask those questions. And my eyes were wide open. I didn't go into that project thinking, well, here's my outcome is to solve homelessness or something, you know, big. It was really basic. It was to explore my sort of, you know, my own questions. And in any case, out of that, I found out two things. One is that people that are homeless are struggling with all kinds of different problems. There's no like single one answer to that question. People are people, right? They have their own backstories. Some of them had run 200-person private investigations teams and had gotten, you know, one thing led to another. They had some, you know, chemicals that they were exposed to and had some health issues, and then weren't able to work, and then their family dried out. So just different stories for different people, right? Some people drug addiction, some people, et cetera, mental health issues. But one of the things that came out of that is that I started to hear from people all over the world, from social issues forums that had screened it, and I realized that I could go through that process of opening my eyes, having a transformation, but other people could go through that process at the same time, and I wouldn't have to be in the room with them. So that to me was powerful, and that to me defined an impact, is that you could impact someone else's perspective by leveraging 2 years of my own experience and never have to talk to that person. and know that was making a difference. And then to find here that one thing led to another, and there was, you know, a significant amount of resources that were generated in order to fix the problem. Unfortunately, it got worse, but that's a whole nother story. But to be able to see local changes that really came from a story, you know, a story that you can tell, that to me was also really inspiring to see local impact and broad perspective shifts.
Yeah, no, that's an incredible story, and I think most filmmakers, I guess, or maybe documentary and filmmakers' dreams. So it's very cool.
And just a quick follow-up for you, Jethro. I think the term producer is kind of elusive to people who aren't in the industry. And so it would be really helpful for you to explain, like, what does a producer do? How are you involved in the storytelling? It may be different for every project.
Great. And I'm sure Mark can give us a better answer again here, but I didn't know what a producer was when I was in college. I certainly wasn't aiming to be a producer. I wanted to direct. I literally didn't know what a producer was. And then it was just like this career path that I fell into. Like I said, you know, started as a production assistant, and before I knew it, it was just going to where the need was on the set. And you know, a producer, that's essentially what a producer does, is they fill in the gaps as far as what needs to happen to get a project from beginning to end. And that includes everything. And there are about 35 different kinds of producers that, for instance, the Producers Guild of America represents. So these are members of the producers team. You know, but again, in its basic form, it's an entrepreneur who's going to invest either their own time, money, energy, resources, be sort of the first investor into the vision of a project before anyone else does, and then bring other resources, talent, team, etc., to the project before anyone else does. And typically that's like a produced by producer. So the producer who, you know, sees it from conception to completion, and they'll be with the project all the way while it's being set up and sold, and then while it's being actually physically produced, and then during the editing process, and then during the marketing and distribution process, and then making sure that the checks make it into the right place for residuals, etc. So and then there's the line producer who typically looks at, you know, below the line. So, and you could think of that like if you were constructing a house, right? So you'd have a general contractor, right? Who's the blueprint is already in place. Of course, the architect already built the blueprint, but you need a general contractor to say, okay, based on this blueprint, how much are we going to have to spend? How long is this going to take? And how do we allocate these resources? And as things come up, the plan never goes exactly according to plan. And so we do what we call within the lines, we'll take a little money here and put a little money back here. And so they're, fine tuning how we're going to get this thing built on time and on budget. So that's essentially a line producer. Then there's an executive producer who can mean all kinds of different things in all kinds of different productions, but typically is, represents either the money or the studio or the actual investment behind an independent project. Then I won't go into all of the other different kinds of producers, but I'll just, everything from coordinating producers, and the Producers Guild over the last 20 years or so has really built out a number of different supervising producers, especially on television. And one producer title in television can mean something very different in features. But there are literally about 45 or so kinds of producers. And I'll turn it to Mark for a better and more concise answer.
No, it's an amazing answer. But just to piggyback on what you said, Jethro, in TV, producers are generally writers. I always liken it to elementary school. You have grade levels, but they're all doing the same basic work, right? Everybody's in class learning math and English. And so in television, producers are just writers who've been bumped up. Every year you're in TV, your title gets a bump. So you start as a staff writer, then you become a story editor, then you become an executive story editor and a co-producer. And once your title hits producer, it means you have more responsibility. You go into editing, you have responsibilities on stage, you work with the actors, you liaison between the actors and the production staff. And once you hit the supervising or executive producer level, you start making decisions that affect the outcome of the actual episode. You may sit in the editing room and have final say over what gets in. You may have final say over script decisions on the floor if you're shooting. And once you see executive producer on the TV titles or on the screen, it can mean one of two things. There are non-writing executive producers, and those are the people, as Jethro said, who are sort of they're the overlords. You know, they're the Zerg. They look over you and they make sure everything works out and goes on and is on schedule, and the money's in the right place, and nobody's yelling at each other, and everybody's getting along. But the other executive producer, the kind of executive producer that I work with and I have been, which is called a showrunner, and that basically means you are the boss. That's all it means. You're the boss. Everybody reports to you, and the buck stops with you. If the show sucks, it's your fault. If the show's great, you get the accolades. So those gradations in TV simply are just writers with additional responsibilities.
Thank you. Thanks for that clarification. All right.
And so what skills or knowledge have served you best in your career, regardless of what role you had in general?
And now we're sort of pivoting to maybe like job advice and a little bit of that aspect of beyond storytelling. Mark.
All right, sure. As I tell my son and my daughter, writing will always stand you in good stead. If you can write, you'll do well in life. It's not a guarantee, but I think it is the closest thing to a guarantee we have. I know people who are lawyers who cannot write. I know people who are business people who cannot write, and the ones who can excel. So I started out as an English major, and I didn't even know writing for TV was a job. That's how blind I was. I had a girlfriend in college who said, "You should write for TV." And I honestly didn't even think that there were people who created this. You know, I never thought about it. I was like, "Oh, right, of course. There are people who write this stuff." As everybody always says to actors, "Oh my God, do you make up your own lines? You're the funniest. You're the funniest on the show. Have you always been funny?" And it drives writers insane. Because we're like, we toiled until 4 a.m. So writing and becoming a more proficient and clearer writer is a great skill to have. The other thing that's very important, I think in all businesses, but especially in TV, is the ability to be collaborative and the ability to not lose your temper. You will hear many stories about famous TV showrunners and writers who throw soda. I had a friend have a Coke can thrown at his head. I had a friend who I was in the room when one of our executive producers threw a chair at a studio executive because he didn't like the notes. And by the way, I agreed with him. I think a chair throw was almost warranted. No, it's a joke, but there are people who lose their tempers. I mean, I had on the set of That 70s Show, there were screaming fights where people were cursing at each other. But those people, although they may have success, generally flame out. There are some who make it, but for the most part, the ones you don't hear about are the ones who are working steadily for 20 or 30 years. You must be collaborative. You must be able to say, you know what, my idea was stupid. I just worked with a man who was the opposite of that, and he is well known for being impossible to work with. And therefore, he gets shows on the air, but he doesn't get the best talent in the room because people don't want to work for him. It's a small town and people understand that rumors are often true. And when those rumors are true, it affects your employment decisions. And so your reputation is your calling card, right? So you want to be the best version of yourself, and you want to grease the skids for other people to have excellent employment experiences. So again, just being a nice person actually goes a long way. Being nice, knowing how to write. There you go. I should have said it in 4 sentences.
Great answer. So yeah, mine, I'm going to go from sort of the most obvious to the less obvious. I mean, the most obvious, of course, reading, writing, and math. Reading because, reading scripts, giving, coverage was that's a whole thing in and of itself, writing reports about scripts, reading, giving feedback, etc. Writing, because that's this, center of all storytelling. And then, math, because it's, there's a whole economic side of this thing, and being able to read, budgets and schedules on a page is important, right? And so how do those numbers and narratives connect? And And then maybe less known, of course, people skills or emotional intelligence. How do you also see people's intentions? How do you lead people? How do you influence people when you don't have a budget? That's one of the reasons a lot of this nonprofit work has been helpful, because if you can help to create synergy, collaboration when people aren't getting paid, then when people are getting paid, it's that much easier because their incentives are aligned. But it's definitely useful. I would say anyone who hasn't been involved in a nonprofit, donate not only your time, but also try to inspire other people who are donating their time and see, how can you help someone work and help them lead and help them serve when they're not getting paid, I think is interesting. And then I had a mentor who taught me a tool called the "What if it's brilliant" tool, right? And so there's so often when we're getting feedback, it's one of the hardest things in the world because we feel like someone's insulting either our baby or even ourselves when they're giving challenging feedback on our work. And so the initial response is that's baloney, like, etc. That doesn't work for me. But if you can sort of get past that, see the gift, right? Yeah, there's a gift here, and think, to the next level. What if it's brilliant? What if that's not even what the person was intending, but maybe a step further? I'm seeing a way that it could be perceived as brilliant, and then how can I apply that? And those people become collaborators, in my experience, that everyone wants to work with. And then lastly, this one is not necessarily only in the industry and the business, but across the board, which is habit hacking, right? We all live daily lives in addition to, monthly, yearly lives. And so how do we create daily habits in our lives that fuel us, our health, not only our health, but fuel, then comes into, into a career trajectory, right? Because this career path, if it has nothing else, it has ups and downs, right? And so the quicker that you can deal with those downs and the more equipped your body and your emotions and your relationships are to be able to deal with the challenges, the more you can pop back up. And in the long term, that's what I've seen create success.
Can I piggyback really quickly on one thing Jethro
Go
just
for
said?
it.
In TV, we write in a room. Generally, you're with a group of, either 8 to, let's say, 15 people. Those are the older days when budgets were bigger. But you always write in collaboration. And one of the most important things I found is there are showrunners who can shut a room down by saying no. I remember reading about Chuck Jones, who was sort of one of the progenitors of Warner Brothers Animation. Bugs Bunny, Porky Pig, Daffy Duck, which I think are some of the funniest cartoons ever written if you go back and watch them. There was a rule in their room that they couldn't say no. They could say anything they wanted, but they were not allowed to say the word no, especially to each other. And I think that's incredibly vital because I've seen people actually shut down. I've been on 2 shows where the showrunner will say no so often and so quickly that people will stop pitching. People will just clam right up and you lose them for an entire day. Not only for the hour, for the half work day to lunch, for the entire day, they're just finished. They just sit there like this. I was on a show recently where the showrunner did that. And when he was out of the room, we put a list of index cards on the board of things we were not allowed to say. And when we finished, we had 32 index cards on the board. So what are you supposed to say if somebody's constantly shooting you down? The most important thing you can say is maybe, okay. I mean, yes, there's some ideas that aren't going to work and you know it right off, but you go, you know what? Interesting, doesn't work right now, but you don't just look at somebody and say, no, it doesn't work, because they're human beings and you want to foment the collaborative process and the creative process. Very important.
Great, thank you. Okay, so we have 7 minutes until the Q&A, so we'll ask one more question and then everybody in the audience, get ready to ask your questions. But I'm just gonna combine these last two. Basically, if you were to give your college self some advice entering the entertainment industry, what would that be? And then you guys also both talked about the collaborative aspect and how you interact with people and network. And in a common theme in, it seems, entertainment industry career advice is building a network. And that's sort of quintessential. I mean, it's helpful in many ways. Mark, you were talking about how that your reputation is how you get jobs and who you know, and Jethro, you're talking about how you affect people in a room and build relationships. And so I guess maybe those are a combination of questions, maybe they're two separate ones, but if you could maybe speak more about how students outside of film school can build networks, and again, how, like, some advice you would give your college self entering the entertainment industry now.
Great questions. Yeah, so I think that forums like this are a great way to network, right? And not only to participate in forums like this, but to be able to provide value. You know, like Sophie and Leanna are doing, to be able to step up and say, you know, no one else is doing this. I'm gonna take this into our own hands and create a network. It's one thing to be a part of a network, but to be able to create a network. That's even more powerful, and people take note, right? They see the people that are providing value, and they feel like they want to give something back to those people. So it's you know, it induces reciprocity. It never hurts to do a good thing. You're creating things that aren't there. You're getting practice. You know, essentially building things. So all of those are good things, right? So creating networks. The other thing, the other part of the question is, you know, what would I say to myself in college, for instance, 20 years ago? I suppose it took me about 15 years to come to this with my partners. I partnered with other former execs and agents, ICM, APA, Innovative, and Gersh, on a production and literary management to help launch the next generation of major careers. And we sat around a table over the course of days, became weeks, became months, became literally years. And we discussed and debated what made the difference in careers, right? At that point, you know, we'd worked with some major careers, Mindy Kaling, or some of the other partners, Christopher Nolan, Paul Thomas Anderson, Guillermo del Toro. And there was something different about those careers that started to experience what we call the lift factor, right? Where everyone's helping to propel that career forward. And after years of debate, we came up with 5 pillars for a strategic and sustainable career launch that gets that kind of a lift factor. The first is portfolio pieces. So having a number of well-polished portfolio pieces that are consistent with your brand or your voice. The second are premises, so viable, marketable, pitchable premises. A premise, of course, being a character, goal, usual, expected opposition, and an unexpected opposition. You know, and premises can be like a sentence or less, and at least a few hundred of those premises. The third is, you know, you can call it network or your team, essentially building your team, an entertainment attorney, a manager, an agent, mentors, execs that are tracking your work. The fourth is in the room skills, which includes everything from an origin story that's set up as a story with a beginning, a middle, and an end that demonstrates, you know, your masterful storytelling ability and why you would be the person to go to for that particular story. And then the fifth is your creative voice or your brand, or if you, you know, if you believe more in sort of a spiritual essence, what is that unique aspect of your soul that you were put on this planet here to give? And how do you clarify that and help your brand or your creative voice drive all of the other pillars and drive every moment of someone's encounter with you? So those are the 5 pillars that we came up with that I wish someone had shared with me 20 years ago.
Those are awesome. I mean, I wish someone had shared that with me. That's amazing. You know, advice that I would have given my younger self. There are lots of pieces of advice that I wish I had had. Propecia would be one of them. But I also really wish that somebody had told me to focus and start early. When I started in this business, I said I was 29, my first job. I was by far the oldest staff writer in the room. Staff writers generally start when they're 24, 25, which I know sounds incredibly young, and it is. People come out here right after college, they hustle, they get in the rooms, they do PA work, as Jethro did, and they get their foot in the door. It's not saying a career can't happen when you're older, it does, People have called me a late bloomer. I've been called that my whole life by producers. They're like, oh, that just means old, really, is what it means. But that's fine, starting early. And if you focus, this is something I tell all beginning writers. They always say, I want to write movies and I want to write TV and I want to write drama and I want to write comedy. And I also have an idea for a novel. And I'm like, that's awesome. You should do all that, but don't do it all at once. Start with something. What do you love the most? Do you love comedy? Great. Whatever it is that you love, write really great examples of that genre. Do it, get it. I think it speaks to Jethro's portfolio, bullet point. Once you have a shining sort of example of your best work in one genre, get your foot in the door, get that first job. People will know your work. You'll gain experience, you'll gain recognition, you'll gain insight. Then you can spread out. Then your tentacles can go anywhere, right? You can go to comedy, you can go to novel writing, whatever you want to do, the doors will be ajar at least. They will not be slammed in your face. The other thing is persistence and perseverance. There's an acting term called staying on the bus. Stay on the bus, right? Everybody wants to act. They're all on the bus together. People get off one by one for different reasons. They get married. They are discouraged. They don't have enough money. But the people who stay on the bus, if they have talent, generally get to their destination. Stay on the bus. I wrote 11 specs. Specs are examples of they're unproduced scripts that you write so that producers can see that you can do the job. I wrote 11 specs before I got my first job. Specs take a long time to write. I mean, some people can, whip them off in a month or 3 weeks, but I couldn't do that. It took me 2-3 months to write a spec. So sometimes I would work simultaneously on different specs, but do the math, 11 specs. That's why I was 29. I was slow. But also the one that got me the job was the 11th spec. The first 10, and I go back and read them, and there's some funny jokes in them, but for the most part, they're awful. Like I was terrible. Oh my God. And so once you realize that you're progressing, that's encouraging and motivating, but also people will see the best example of your work once you get to the end. So focus, specs, start early, but really focus and start early, I think are the two greatest examples of something I wish I'd said to myself.
Awesome.
Thank you.
Okay, great. Thank you. So now we're going to open the chat to our Zoom audience and also have open questions up to our live audience. So if you have questions, type it in the chat. And then if you're in person, raise your hand. And we're going to call on all of the questions just to keep it regulating. And then you can either, if you're on the Zoom, you can unmute and ask your question yourself, or we can read it. And then if you're in person, we will probably we'll repeat it. If you really wanted to come up to podium to have a face-to-face, you could, but we'll probably repeat it. So great. Do we have any questions? Not seeing any questions.
Yeah. Oliver.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. I guess like with all the changes in the industry, streaming and now with COVID, I guess like how their jobs have shifted over the last few years.
Cool. So I don't know if you guys could hear that, but we have a question in the room. So I'll repeat it for the audience members as well. The question was, how has streaming basically impacted your careers, or the introduction of streaming platforms like Netflix and Hulu changed your experience in the industry, job roles, and anything else?
Yeah, I'll start with it, and I think maybe the other part of that question is how has the pandemic influenced people's work as well? I imagine. As far as how this Zoom universe has impacted people's work, it's you can take meetings anywhere in the world with anyone in the world, and also be able to pitch projects in a way that you couldn't have prior. You can show your sizzle reels. You can use this medium that's a square to be able to, highlight certain things. You can bring your notes with you and bring those up and then you can also take. I know people that are taking 30 meetings a day when they used to have drive time and only be able to take like 6 on a good day with traffic. And not only that, you can do that from anywhere in the world. So this platform has some opportunities. And then as far as the streaming version, I'm sure Mark has some ideas on this. But it's of course over the last couple of years that getting a movie in theaters is like not a possibility anymore. But the good news with streamers is that you can produce content quickly. You can get it out there quickly. Netflix has a way of prioritizing and reaching very specific niche audiences that weren't able to be accessed prior. So you can target your audiences in a way that's much more specific than ever in human history. And those audiences can be all over the world, but maybe you're talking to 60 something females who are struggling with with their grandchildren, whatever it is. There's a community for it. So all of those things have changed. And initially it was this sort of wild west of who knew what was happening. But now there are a couple of platforms in the streaming world that have sort of taken it, and they're challenging to navigate the Amazons and the Netflixes of the world, and they have their own culture. More and more people are starting to understand how they operate, how to get projects to them, what kinds of projects they're looking for. And arguably, since now they have the data, they have more clarity on what kinds of projects they're looking for and people are looking for. So it's becoming a much quicker time to turn from audience and what their hopes, desires, needs are for content and the content creators.
This is going to be good news for everyone who's just starting out. The democratization of TV has arrived, folks. When I started out, if you didn't know the executives at the network and you hadn't been in the business for a while, you were screwed. But now, Rachel Bloom is my favorite example, my crazy ex-girlfriend, right? She was a woman who had these really funny videos online, and I would watch them all the time. And she had these great music videos that she did. And I was like, this woman is so funny. She's so great. She should have her own TV show. And then she did. Then this woman had her own TV show out of nowhere. I'm like, how did that happen? So this happens all the time. It's like the American Idol effect. Honestly, you can be sitting anywhere. Jethro mentioned this, but it has worked to the benefit of newbies everywhere. You can be anywhere. You can be in Saskatchewan, freezing your ass off and have an idea. You post it on TikTok. The next thing you know, some guy at Gersh is like, this guy's funny in Saskatchewan. I'm going to buy him a plane ticket to LA and give him a deal. A gross exaggeration, but kind of true. It is unbelievable the opportunities that are there for you guys. And I say guys, meaning men and women and everybody. But what I also mean is that you should take this opportunity and run with it, right? Don't let it just sort of pass you by. If you have an idea, post it, make it. In the commercial, it's true. It's like a movie studio in your pocket. You have a movie studio in your pocket, and streaming services don't care whether you have a big budget, a small budget. They just want talent. There's so much. They call TV a monster. You have to feed the monster. There's so much airtime and airspace. They need content, and they'll get it anywhere. They don't care how old you are. They don't care your experience level. They just want it to be good. So take this opportunity and run with it. The other thing that I want to be very clear about is that you must present a polished, finished product, because, Jethro was talking about the people you've been working with and those careers you launched, Nolan, Mindy Kaling, Guillermo del Toro. Those people are heavy hitters, and now they're working in television. Those folks ate my lunch. Like in the old days, they would just stay and make their genius movies. They would go in the theaters and we would all go watch them and go, wow, those are great people. Now they're on TV and they're like, they're boxing everybody who's little like me out. And so we have to work harder and run faster. And that means you guys have to work harder and run faster too. So only present polished, finished products, and don't birth your babies until they're ready, right? Don't let them out into the world until they're absolutely ready. There you go.
Yeah, and to Mark's point, I think that there's this myth about talent within the industry as being something that you either have or you don't have. And because of that, people are making very early judgments about whether or not you're someone who has talent. We happen to believe that it can be nurtured. It's a matter of discipline. You can grow that over time. But since not everyone in the business embraces that, people are going to make judgments. And so to Mark's point, the more you can hold things back, be developing stuff furiously on your own and then expose people to it, when the time is right, the more that you're going to help them get to that judgment that, oh, that's someone that totally has talent because they came out of nowhere. And then to be able to underpromise, this is something that, it's still very rough, et cetera, even though you've worked for, 2 years consistently every day on it, it's still very rough and it needs your input, et cetera. So to be able to present it, underpromise and then over deliver, also gives people the perception of talent as well.
Very cool. All right. Do we have any more questions? Don't see any in the chat. We have a shy audience.
I have a question for Jethro. When you started,
I have a question for you.
When you started your documentary, how did you start? Did you just say to yourself, "I'm going to make a documentary," and you picked up a camera, or was there some sort of pre-production process where you had to raise money? How did you do that?
So I happened to get a grant from my college, which basically covered my living expenses for the summer. And with that, I basically was able to hack a way to live for free and then invest that in a camera. So I got a camera. And this is, of course, not the way that the industry works, especially in documentary. You always want to know what your story is ahead of time, go out, capture just those sound bites and make it as efficient and effective as possible. That's nothing to do with what I did. I did the opposite. I said, I don't know what the story is I want to tell. Let me let the world unfold and let me find the story. And so it took me, years. I captured over 100 hours of footage. I interviewed, over 100 people. And through that, I started to see which stories were the most sort of evocative, and over time I would follow those and then do follow-up stories there. And so it took 4 years while I was going through college to sort of finish it off and send it out. But arguably it may be a little bit stronger than it might have been if I was just going in and collecting bites. But now I never work that way these days, right? You got to know your story and your script going into it.
Very cool.
Can I ask you a question?
Of course.
If there are any other questions, please, those would trump my questions any day. But I'm very curious about Mark. How did you get sort of your start? And I mean, you're doing these massive shows, and it seems like one thing follows another, and like it comes very easily these days. How did you get sort of your first footing in the door, and how did you become an overnight success?
That's very kind of you. Just to make everyone feel better, just getting a job is still a struggle. It's still difficult. It's never easy. But to Jethro's question, networking. I worked in a magazine. Many of you will not remember this movie, but American Beauty won the Oscar, I think, in 1999. And True Blood, those are both Alan Ball productions. Alan Ball is a great writer. And I worked in a magazine where he was the guy who made pie charts. He was sitting in his little cubicle making pie charts. And at night he was writing plays. And we were friends. And he got recognized for his amazing plays. And then he was, snatched up by Hollywood. So other people who worked at this magazine, Roz Moore, who was the showrunner on Home Improvement. She created and not created, but helped run Home Improvement. My editor created the show Numbers. So it was this little trade magazine where it was like an incubator for TV and movie writers. But again, really quickly, it was networking, knowing people, just putting yourself out there. If you see people whose writing you like, DM them. just, go out. I mean, you have Twitter now. It's so easy to contact people who you admire. Do that, because you never know what doors will open. That's my quick story.
Top 3 movies or TV shows for people interested in writing comedy. Yeah. That's the question.
Maybe to study or enjoy.
Impossible. It's an unanswerable question. I mean, I love that somebody asked it. I think it's a great question, but it really is such a matter of taste. Do you like cerebral? I'll go back to Woody Allen. Do you like cerebral Woody Allen comedies? Do you like, Pop Star? Do you like Seth Rogen? I mean, This Is the End and Ted are 2 of my favorite comedies ever. I think they're amazing. But Crimes and Misdemeanors is also one of my favorite comedies, and Annie Hall is. So they're completely different. It's like, what is a comedy? I wish I could answer that question. I would just encourage you to, dig in and watch, and then you'll make your own decisions.
All right. Well, we're at our break point, so that worked really well. So thank you to Jethro and Mark for coming today. We're really, really grateful to you, and you guys were amazing panelists. So you can hear our room from our thing. Everyone's clapping. So yeah, now we're gonna take a break. We're gonna try to figure out some tech issues that are in here, and we will come back in 15 minutes at 2:30.
Just want to thank you both so much. This is so fun.
Thank you.
Great. Awesome.
All right. So welcome back, everyone. Now we're going to get started with the student filmmaker panel. And so if other student filmmakers are here and want to join the Q&A panel, you can message us or call out, and we'll include you. But first we have Logan. He's a junior at Haverford College and majors in astrophysics. Here we go. He's a Franco-American and moved around his whole life, going from Europe to Hong Kong and now the United States. He writes, despite my astrophysics major and STEM-related academic inclinations, I love photography, painting, sculpture, and filmmaking. These activities have accompanied me all my life. You can see him up there on the left. And he initially learned and pursued them on his own, only recently choosing to take courses related to the arts. And his film is The Sun on Her Skin. So welcome, Logan. Next, we have Milan. He's a Drexel student majoring in photography. He's a filmmaker and photographer hailing from the San Fernando Valley area in Los Angeles. Having relocated to Philadelphia for college, he says he's actively searching for the best fish taco in town. Most of Milan's film work can be categorized as absurdist comedy, which he would agree with, and his film is Straight Hems Are Sewn at 1 a.m. So welcome, Milan. And we would have had Brian, but unfortunately can't be here today.
Welcome to the student Q&A.
Thank you for having us.
Yeah, so
Hi.
we're gonna open it up first. But we can get it started with one question. So can you both tell us about the genesis of your films and what were the inspirational ideas and how did you really just begin in like that first, when you had the idea, what did you do first?
I guess I can take it first. So for me, really, it was like a collaborative process with one of my friends and collaborators. Hank Fisher also starred in Straight Hems. And it was really just born out of like hanging out and just having ideas and spitballing. And my film isn't meant to be taken too seriously. So it's really just a collaboration of a lot of fun ideas and a lot of weirdness and wildness. So it really just came out of us just hanging out and having fun and thinking of a location that we wanted as our main driver of the story, and then just going all around with it and having fun with it. And also our friends Ziggy and Andrew, who made the music, were fantastic, and turning those visual ideas into an audio form, something that, because we don't have dialogue in the film, so the sound and the music really was able to convey a lot of the emotion in our film. And I think it was just born out of our ability to just collaborate and like not be afraid to make something weird and funky, and that's really what it is. So yeah.
Yeah, on my end, it's just quarantine boredom essentially. Like, I don't know, I had a lot of time to myself to think and like write and like draw and do stuff like that. And so I just kind of like, yeah, I wrote a bunch of stuff, and like more or less it kind of coalesced. I realized, oh, I'm trying to tell this particular story, so I did that. And I didn't have a movie camera. I just had a Pentax K1000 film camera. So I was like, I guess I'll have to make a still picture film. And so that's kind of what I did. Yeah, and I kind of wrote it, and then it just sat, in a book for like 6 months before I made it. Yeah, and then I made it, and that was just it. Yeah.
Great. Now we're going to open it up to questions in the chat and in the room. So if anybody wants to ask them.
Oh, here's one. How did you go about using the resources at your disposal in terms of budget, actors, and location?
And that's from Julian Hammond, who's another filmmaker and from Sydney, Australia. So, hello.
I guess for me, budget, really, there wasn't any budget. A lot of the actors were all my friends. I did use Actors Access to cast 2 of the actors in the film, and I compensated them a little bit. But honestly, like, just out of wanting to collaborate together, the location was incredibly helpful. It's somewhere near me where I live. I had known about it, Milton Needies. So I just went in there one day, giving them the spiel, telling them I'm a student wanting to make a film. And they were really helpful and gave us all the resources we need. As far as coming in, we shot from like 11 p.m. to 2 a.m. Because there were 24-hour dry cleaners. So we made sure to come in when there weren't going to be many people in the store. And that was all free, luckily for us. And then everybody else, yeah, just out of there wanting to create and make something fun. And we all came together, and any like props or whatever came out of my pocket, but luckily we were able to keep it pretty small. It wasn't like anything too insane. Didn't have to rent any gear, which was really nice. So yeah, try to keep it as minimal as possible. And I had known a friend who also is very good with sound, who was able to help us with some live audio, and he had all the equipment for that. And just relying on like a really strong network of people that I can trust and just are great with sharing resources with each other.
Yeah, I mean, yeah, I was given a long time ago a bunch of rolls of film and a camera, and so that's just how it worked. I just I lugged those around, and so you could probably notice actually when you look, if you rewatch the film very closely, that there's like difference in exposure in some of the same frames, and that's because of the X-rays that I put in my fucking suitcase because I'm stupid and lugged it around, and so it would go through the X-rays, and then I got the pictures back, and I was like, why are there these exposure problems? And that's why I figured that out actually this summer. I didn't even know it was that. I just thought it was my camera that had light leak or something. But yeah, because I read about it. Anyway, doesn't matter. Okay, yeah. So yeah, the point is that yeah. So that's what I did. And in terms of actors, well, I had a friend who I'd talked to about my films, about I'd watched films with her, and I did stuff like that over the quarantine. And so I just it felt very much like someone who like actually followed a lot of my intellectual and artistic kind of like journey over the course of that time, where I had a lot of free time to just delve into that. And so yeah, I kind of like gave her the spiel. She liked it. She helped me like rewrite my script, because I'm a visual guy, I'm not a like words guy. So it's like, yeah, it helped like polish it and make it like actually like nice, I guess. And yeah, and so then just Haverford College, like where I study, I was just like, you know what, go sit in the grass right here. I think it's like, I think in terms of location, I think like location is like the least important. Like in the end, like you can find if you're anywhere, like you can find such a diverse amount of things if you really just look for them. I don't know. And it's like, yeah, so yeah, that's what I did. So I probably spent a total of like $30 for like the developing of the 2 roles, and that was like it. Yeah.
And your film was for a class, right?
Yeah, so actually, that's the funny thing, is like, I was going to do it that semester. I was like, I'd planned the semester before. At the end, I was like, I'm going to do it. And then I was in a class, and she was like, well, your final project can be whatever the fuck you want. And I was like, that's really good, because I can just do what I was going to do. So that's what I did. And so that was, yeah, so exactly. So I ended up submitting for that class. So it worked out really nicely. Yeah.
Very cool.
Milan, can you talk more about how you worked with your friend on kind of having the music blend well with your piece? I mean, yeah, you talked about how you don't have dialogue, and I think the music kind of took the role of dialogue in a lot of ways and kind of reflects the emotion and the interaction in the scene. So can you talk about like how involved you were in that process, or maybe you weren't, and just what that looked like?
Yeah, totally. My two friends, Andrew and Ziggy, are insanely talented musicians. Ziggy goes to school at Berkeley in Boston, and then Andrew's outside of school just pursuing his own music career, and they're both incredibly talented. And we just use Andrew's bedroom. He has a whole little recording studio in there. It probably took us about like 5 or 6 sessions over the course of like a month and a half or 2 months to really like nail it down. And all the sound effects also, like when you hear Andrew's boots clacking as he's walking back in one scene outside of the front, we got creative with some sound effects that ways. In the hot dog scene with all the munching, we just got some blueberries and a microphone and just recorded it into the mic. So we got creative with what we needed to do, but luckily like they're incredibly talented with not only like that sound effect side of the stuff, but just seeing it and watching the film and then translating it. It honestly like took a lot of the pressure off my shoulders, and I just kind of let them do their thing, and then kind of tweaked it and gave them some insights where I felt like maybe it could use a little bit of work, but like really it was all there, just creative, just flowing, coming out. I feel like it's half visual, half music as far as like what carries. So incredibly grateful for them and like their ability to just run with it and just have fun and make it what it was. So yeah.
Very cool. All right, we have another. Yeah, do you want to read it?
Yeah, we have a question from my mom for Logan. She says, trick question, what parallels and or intersections are there between astrophysics and filmmaking?
So actually a lot. I usually shy away from labels like that because I think that they really don't mean a lot, in the sense that to me filmmaking is like, and astrophysics are just specific ways of approaching the same fundamental problems. And the problems are, like, what am I doing here? I think it's that to quote Mishima on this, actually, because like Mishima is this guy I've had this kind of like deep dive into it like recently. He believes that you have to embody the art. You know what I mean? Like you embody your art, and if you don't embody your art, then your art's bad. And I think that's fundamentally like what's up. It's like I think I have a lot of like existential questions that plague. I don't think they're plague actually. I think they're like they've just been around me in the sense that I've always had this certain natural curiosity for certain things. So astrophysics is kind of like answering the curiosity in a very kind of like I look up at the stars and I feel a great sense of wonder, and I'm like, wow, this is so beautiful, and like what is that and everything, And I feel the exact same thing when I'm doing filmmaking. Like when I make a film, it's because I have like I have this intrinsic, I have both this balance of like wanting to understand beauty and also wanting to create it. And I think that there's something, and I think filmmaking is just modifying that. Astrophysics is more of like a kind of like sitting there and like looking at the reader and being like, okay, so this is what the universe looks like, and this is what these beautiful things are, and this is how they work and thingamajig, and this is how they create beauty. And I think that filmmaking, it's essentially, okay, likening this like this. To me, watching a cool film is the same thing as doing astrophysics. Like it's like you're looking at something else, create something of beauty that moves you. And so to me, and so when I do filmmaking, it's more like, or any art in that general, or any creation. I'll go as far as say all creation is art. But I think that it's just really just me trying to be like, it's really me going like, I've seen all these other things do really cool stuff, and I want to do that too. So that's just I think that's the parallel to. I think it's like I think they both address very fundamental like facets of like how you interact with how I interact with the world. And so so that's the link. Although if I had a choice, I would definitely do filmmaking. Unfortunately, astrophysics is like the easier one to get a job in, so but
Still great answer, and I think very much related to SLOP in that we, none of us are actually studying filmmaking, and so we choose to bridge our interests. So, and that to me, when I'm just thinking about it, that's a tough one to connect, but you did it pretty seamlessly. So, yeah.
Do we have any more questions? Do we have any questions in the room, or? Yeah.
The biggest lessons they learned over the course of creating their films.
Okay, yeah. So just to repeat that for you guys, what were the biggest lessons that you learned over the course of making the film that you submitted today for this festival?
I think my biggest lesson was definitely planning out more shooting time. I think I found myself to be very rushed shooting. I didn't realize that I probably packed way too many scenes into shoot in the nights that we shot. We shot it in 2 nights, each of like 3-hour sessions each. And I think that we started earlier, ended later, something I definitely could have taken my time more through the process and thought of it a little bit more clearly, maybe changed some things, thought of things differently in the time. So probably just more shooting time overall, but also like working with the location where we had a limited amount of time since it was a business. There's only so much we could have done, but I'd say that's like the biggest learning curve for me. And also preparation, I think, is really huge, like knowing what I want to shoot exactly how, going into it and taking like a really taking an approach where I know what I want to get out of the night, where it's not gonna leave me feeling empty-handed or like I could have done something differently is important for me. And I learned that a lot through shooting this.
Cool.
Yeah, I think I learned how easy actually filmmaking is. Like, and I know that's a hot take, but I think that like I'd always shied away from it. Like I tried to make films back when I was like 13, and it was just such a fucking pain. And I realized, I realized that like the hardest part is just the pre-production. It's like actually like writing shit down, like finding people that you want to like work with. But then once you like have that, and it's just like I grabbed my camera and like in an afternoon it was done. Like I had all the shots. You know what I mean? Like we shot some shit like around noon, so like the shadows would be nice. And then we went and like shot some shit around at night. When like it was a night, and the total shooting must have been like 4 hours. You know what I mean? And I was good, and it's pictures, so it's a lot easier. But I did the same thing with like a video camera with summer, and it was like I was like, oh wow, this is easy. And I was about to say, I think it's like yeah. But if anything, actually though, it's not rushing into it. I think also because I remember when I used to try to do it, I would just rush into it. I'd just be like, I just need to do it right now. And I realized that actually having like rewriting your script like a million times, like having your ideas down, having everything very concise, knowing exactly, having very clear painting what you want in your head, I think is also really important. And also working with others. Because my text would have been really bad if it hadn't been for the person I work with, Jethro, who helped me like smooth it out and make it like, yeah. So that's what I was going to say. I'm also not capable of everything. So yeah, that's also a cool lesson I learned.
Very cool. Let's check our timing. Any last questions? We're still about 10 minutes ahead of schedule. We should probably get back on track just because we have a couple people coming in later, hopefully. Okay, so we have a cool. Okay.
Okay. Well, either of you continue to make films, or are you finished?
Question from the live room.
Yes.
Definitely not finished. Like I think this is just kind of the inception and the start. Especially with all the people that were in the process of making Straight Hams. I think we all either we want to be actors or musicians, filmmakers, whatever it is. We want to pursue it and keep on doing it. So I think this is just a start for us, and it's something that will hopefully continue and manifest itself in different ways. So yeah, definitely not an end.
Yeah, it's the same for me. It's like, if anything, it's like, it's like the first in the chain of events. You know what I mean? Like doing it the first time is like, I think, now I'm just like constantly like hauling, like, borrowing shit from VCam and like, hauling it around. So no, it's definitely just the beginning.
Good to hear from both of you. Maybe one more question if someone has it, and then we'll switch gears.
Anybody in the chat? Okay, we have a question in the live room. How did you guys pick your subject? It's kind of a general question. Do you want to interpret as you will? I guess maybe your genre and your focus of the film, and what drew you to that. You both had very unique, different kinds. So.
If anything, I think thinking about genre is actually like the most limiting thing. I think asking that question, I think, is the issue. In the sense that I think that, going back to Mishima, actually, just look at yourself, you know what I mean? It's like be like, what am I thinking about constantly? Like, what am I doing? You know what I mean? Or more, not even thinking, like, actually asking that question is stupid too. Sorry, not stupid. Just not helpful. I think that, like, to me, like, it's really just writing. I just constantly am writing my books, like in class and whatever. Every time I have an idea, every time I have some sort of like something that marks me and that, like, you know, occupies my brain for like more than 10 seconds, I kind of like write it down. You know what I mean? And I find that, like, you know, my thoughts circle around certain concepts and I can draw them together later on when I'm like going through like the pages that I've written and whatnot, and I can find common themes and everything, and it just kind of naturally flows. And I don't stop to think too long about what I'm actually doing. I only do that once I have a finished product, you know, once I have a script for the first script. Then I try to figure out what I'm doing with this. But at first it's really just like this hodgepodge of ideas, and I'm just like, I don't even, is hodgepodge an actual word? I just feels natural to say, I don't know. But yeah, no, yeah. Anyway, it's just like this like really god, like things that you're just like writing down, and that you're like, wow, okay. And then it makes sense because it's your brain, you know, and your brain isn't just completely illogical. So it's like, you know, you end up with some form of sense and cohesion. And if you don't, then that's fine too. I mean, yeah, but anyway, yeah, that's what I think.
Yeah, I mean, I think like straight hems is kind of hard to say there's like a subject in it, because it feels very subject-less to me. So I don't really know how we came upon it. I think like I get inspired by locations and physical things and then kind of make a story around it, like let my imagination kind of run wild. And also like with collaboration with everybody else. But yeah, I think like I'm inspired by a lot of like random experimental films. Like I love All Gas, No Brakes. And I think like that kind of played a lot into the characters in the film. And like other like Ryan Shakartin, one of my favorite experimental filmmakers. So like just getting a catalog of different things that I can pull from and kind of mold into my own work is like something that really just brought me to the subject. And I had always known I wanted to shoot something at Milton Needies, like growing up right near it and driving past it almost every day on my way to school, just from the visual aspect of it. So I think it was like always kind of forming from that sense. And then once I met the right people to make it with, it just kind of brought itself out. Yeah.
Very cool. All right. Thank you so much, Milan and Logan. Can we give them a round of applause? And with that, we're going to pivot to our award ceremony. So let's just see if Skiz is here. Hopefully he is. And if not, we will just start. All right. So today we have a couple judges, and most of them were not able to come based on other arrangements and timing. But all right, so as we are inching closer and closer to knowing the winners of the SLOP Film Festival. But before we go into award ceremonies, I'd like to introduce our jury so that you can get to know the people who judged every single film we saw last night. So to begin, we have Sizzik. He is a filmmaker, writer, musician, artist, and film festival careerist. He has held positions on Micro Cinefest, Maryland Film Festival, Slam Dance, and the Atlanta Film Festival, as well as serving on juries and advisory boards at many other festivals. His documentary features include Sound Mechanic, Ice Pick to the Moon, Hit and Stay, and Freaks in Love. His short films include The French Toast Man, Alfred Jerry, and Pataphysics, Little Castles, Manager's Corner, and music videos, Beach House, Young Fresh Fellows. He writes for music and film magazines and performs music with the Stents, Go Pills, the Jennifers, Garage Sale, Half Japanese, and Mink Stole and her wonderful band. And then we also had Christine Elise Mccarthy, who has been acting professionally for over 30 years and is recognized primarily for her roles as Kyle, the gal who killed Chucky in Child's Play 2, and returned to mess with the Chuck some more in Cult of Chucky, and will appear in several episodes of the 2021 fall season of SYFI and the USA series Chucky, which is actually, I think, just released recently. She is also known for playing Emily Valentine on Beverly Hills 90210, a role she reinvented, playing a heightened version of herself on the 2019 Fox hit, the Beverly Hills 90210 reboot, and the Harper Tracy on ER. She has also appeared in recurring roles in China Beach, In the Heat of the Night, and Tell Me You Love Me. Among her other film roles are Abel Ferreira's Body Snatcher, and 2 films starring Viggo Mortensen, Vanishing Point and Boiling Point.
Her directorial debut, Bathing in the Single Girl, was accepted into over 100 film festivals and won 20 awards. This is still Christine.
Oh, still
yeah.
Christine.
She was on the selection committee of Michigan's Waterfront Film Festival from its inception in 1999 until 2014. She was co-director of the Victoria, Texas Independent Film Festival, programmed for the Self-Medicated Film Festival and the Lady Filmmakers Film Festival, and has consulted and judged for many others. Then we have Lori Felker. She's a filmmaker, teacher, programmer, and performer. Her films celebrate the ineloquent, oppositional, frustrating, and chaotic qualities of human interaction. She has made work in a variety of forms, including experimental film, video installation, music video, documentary, and fiction. Her short films and 1 feature documentary have screened internationally at festivals, including Rotterdam, Slamdance, Ann Arbor Film Festival, BAM Cinema Fest, Exis in Korea, Festival du Nouveau, I don't speak French, de Nouveau Cinema, Logan, you can correct me, in Montreal, and Kinedot in Russia. She loves every facet of filmmaking and has worked as a cinematographer, editor, and actor for various artists and directors. She is programmed for the likes of the Chicago Underground Film Festival, Slamdance, and Roots and Culture Gallery in Chicago. She is a recipient of an Illinois Arts Council grant, a Wexner Center residency, a Brico Forward Fund, and a Fulbright in Berlin in 2000. She loves to collaborate and is an associate professor at the University of Wisconsin-Milwaukee. Lastly, we have Laura Deutsch. And she is an education director of PhillyCam. So PhillyCam is a community center based in Philadelphia, dedicated to teaching the skills necessary to create and distribute media for almost every platform. In her work, she shows passion for using film as a medium for social change and community building. In addition to her filmmaking, website building, and program directing at PhillyCam, she's the creative director for Messages in Motion. As described on our website, Messages in Motion works with neighborhood programs and community-based organizations to produce, distribute, and exhibit short-form documentary videos as a way to explore and enhance existing community organizing work. The project seeks to facilitate an exchange within and between neighborhood residents in Philadelphia in order to share strategies and responses to social concerns. Through video production, workshops, multiple distribution platforms, and innovative teaching models, MIM activates relationships by networking people and promoting self-expression as a step towards social change. So all very accomplished people with long bios, so I'm a little out of breath. Now that you've gotten to know the judges a little better, let's get started with the award ceremony. So we're so grateful to every single filmmaker that found SLOP this year. Whether online through Haverford or friends, you've all made this event what it is. And what an amazing way to begin the SLOP journey. I know Sophie and I couldn't be more satisfied and energized to do more in the future. And with that, let's give a round of applause to all the filmmakers. Yay.
All right, so we wish that we had our judges here to sort of give some words on how they enjoyed the screenings, but we can report back that in our meetings with them after they viewed all of the films, that they were really impressed. They were shocked that none of the students were studying film traditionally, and thought that the quality overall was just really impressive, and they enjoyed it a lot. So I guess we just get into it.
We could have a screen share moment here.
Yeah, we'll have a screen share moment. Well, that's what we're announcing. So.
Right. Okay.
Okay.
Good
So
point.
here's how this is gonna work. We are gonna we're gonna say the place, and then we're gonna ask everyone to drum roll. And even if you don't have your audio on, just do it in your room, because we're trying to create the in-person experience for everyone. Unfortunately, COVID has, constrained us to Zoom still, but we will be doing a drum roll here, and then we will announce. So that's the plan.
Okay. So first, with an honorable mention, Stars Align. Yay! By Lena Mita. Okay.
Congratulations.
And next,
Third place, we have Silent and Loud by Abby Isakov and Risha Gandhi.
in second place, here we go. I have No Desire to Suffer in Reality or in Retrospect by Ebony Myers.
And finally, in first place, winning the Sloppy Award and a subsidized entrance fee into the one and only 2021 South by Southwest Film Festival, we have Zone at 1 a.m. Congrats, Milan. Okay, so winners, you should be in touch with us later today, or we'll be in touch with you later today and tomorrow about when to expect prizes. And Milan will give you a special code. There's a timeline on that as well. So you can use that to submit your film to the South by Southwest Film Festival. There we go. Congratulations.
Thank you. I appreciate that.
If you wanted to say a few words, you could.
Yeah, I mean, I don't have anything prepared, but again, like, thank you to everybody that was in the process of making Straight Hams. It was an absolute joy to work with everybody and really make that happen. Thank you to Milton Edie's for allowing us to shoot in your amazing dry cleaners, your pink building. My parents for supporting me through that, and just everybody that's part of the process. Maya for being such a great mentor to me and allowing me to like show that I can make really whatever I want. So yeah, thank you. Thank you to everybody. And thank you to Sloppy for putting this on and hosting such a great event. It's been amazing to come last night and see all the films in person and everybody else that submitted. And all the films were so fantastic. I loved watching them all and getting to know a lot of the people that made them now and being a part of it. So yeah, thank you.
thank you.
All right, so we're just gonna sum it up now. We've concluded our event, but before you go, we want to say a big thank you again to Shayna, Jim and Bob, Sang, Skiz, Christine, Lori, Laura, Sang again is on the list, Jethro, and Mark, and also our tech people, Charles and Jen. So thank you so much. We are planning on having many more SLOP events, including panels and screenings and other video projects in the future. So if you're interested in hearing about those, we'll send a follow-up email that you can sign up for our newsletter. And then if you're a current student, you should definitely join our SLOP network via the website to get roles on sets and projects in the future, not just on Haverford's campus, but in the greater Philly area, because that's where we're based right now. And we also wanted to share some upcoming events in our community, but there will also be Zoom elements. So there is the Haverford Incubator info session on October 29th with Miss Shayna Nickel. We highly recommend that anyone with an idea that they're very passionate about should go and check it out and just feel out. Just talk to Shayna. She has the answers. There's a BICO Fall Art Festival coming up on November 13th with live performances and student artwork. And then finally, this is something that Jethro and I are working on together, but Jethro is running. This is the Ivy Entertainment event on Saturday, November 20th, which will be basically a virtual roundtable and Q&A with some of the entertainment industry's top leaders. Past summit speakers have included executives from Paramount, Disney, Netflix, Amazon, Hulu, Showtime, MGM, United Artists, Sony Pictures, The Hollywood Reporter, and Google, and also writers and producers and directors from Hook, Mozart in the Jungle, Moonlight, Contact, Dracula, Robin Hood, Prince of Thieves, and Backdraft, and other visionary creatives. Aisha Taylor was there previous years. So SLOP will be sharing information on these events on our Instagram and on our website and an email. So with that, thank you everyone for coming. We have music and snacks again outside for the people in person. We're also selling shirts to fundraise for future student film projects, and they were made with love by the SLOP team. So that's why they are hand spray painted. So yeah, great. Thank you again, everyone who made this possible. And that concludes our film festival.
Yay.